Hey everybody, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools channel. Today we're going to talk about how portable air conditioners work and some of the problems you may encounter while using them. Stick around and I'll see you right after this. Alright guys, we're going to talk about a portable AC, how it works, and the possible issues you could be having with yours. So as a kid, I always thought of an AC as a device that actually blows out cool air. And it does that, but it doesn't produce the cool air itself. What actually is happening is that the AC, or the air conditioner, is removing heat from the room, and consequently, the room gets cooler. And the principle behind that is that it sucks in the air, the ambient air from the room, or the atmosphere, right? It sucks it in, and then it blows out cool air by removing the heat from the air that it sucks in, and thus you have a cooler atmosphere. Now there is a trade-off. The mechanical components and the mechanical processes inside the AC that allows this process to happen, those processes produce heat themselves. And that heat produced from the mechanical components like the compressor and any residual heat from the room has to be expelled from the room as well. And that's why you have this tube attached to the back of your portable AC. Okay, you vent this out of the window so all of that excess heat can go outside. In a regular standalone AC that's outside, on the roof or in your yard somewhere, the components are already outside, so you don't need any exhaust system like the portable AC. But because all the components that generate heat are inside the room, inside your home, that heat has to be exhausted. And that's why you have this. Okay, so now that we took off the housing, we can get a better look at some of the components that make a portable AC work. Right here, we see some copper tubing coming out of one section, okay, and we see some copper tubing coming out of another section. And if we look on the side of it, we see these fins. Now the copper tubing is actually going like this, okay, in an S pattern all the way across, right? But it's covered by these fins here. Now the two sections are actually a very important part of the portable AC configuration. One is the condenser, and this one is the evaporator. Now this component down here is the muscle or the power source of the portable AC or any AC unit. It's called the compressor. Now the compressor is responsible for pumping or moving another very important element throughout this system, throughout these coils. That element is called refrigerant. You may know it as Freon. Freon is what allows the heat exchange to happen. And when I say heat exchange, I simply mean that heat is either being removed or added to the environment. But you couldn't do it as easily without another very important component, and that's the fan or blower. The fan or blower blows air throughout the system, and it either blows it out one way as hot air, or it blows it out the other way as cool air. By passing air over the hot coils of the condenser and through the exhaust system and then out of the house, or by passing it over the cool coils of the evaporator through the vents into your house to cool your home. The fan or blower makes that happen. Now you may be asking, how in the world do these coils get hot or cold in the first place? Well, let's go back to the refrigerant. When you buy your unit, it's what's called a sealed system, and the refrigerant is already sealed in the coils when you buy it. Now the refrigerant in the coils is in a gaseous state. It's not in a liquid form. So when you turn your machine on, the compressor kicks in, and the job of the compressor is to pressurize those gas molecules. In other words, squeeze them together really tightly. That's the job of the compressor. When you do that, it makes that gaseous refrigerant very, very hot. It makes it hotter than the outside temperature or the temperature of your room. Hey, here's a fun fact. Refrigerant is known to absorb heat. It can absorb heat readily. Now, is it man-made? They do have some synthetic refrigerants, but they also have natural refrigerants. Here's a couple: ammonia, water, carbon dioxide, air. Those are types of naturally occurring refrigerants. But in this case, we have synthetic refrigerant flowing through these coils. And like I said, refrigerant is known to absorb heat. So that refrigerant sucks up all the heat from your room, and with the aid of the fan, it blows it out of the exhaust tube through the window outside of your home. That's just because the law of thermodynamics are kicking in, which states energy can neither be created or destroyed, it can only be transferred. And heat will naturally flow to a cooler environment. So the fan just helps that process along by pushing that heat out and helping the law of thermodynamics happen. Thanks, fan. But that's only one half of the story. During its journey as a very hot compressed gas through the condenser coils, we know that the refrigerant sucked up all the heat from the room, and the fan helped to blow all that trapped heat in the coils out through the exhaust tube out of your house. But the journey of the refrigerant through the coils still continues. At some point, it turns to liquid, but it still maintains the same temperature as it was in the gaseous form. Very hot. So the refrigerant's on a mission, and its mission is to cool us down, right? We want to feel cool. That's why we turn our ACs on, all right? But it just expelled hot air, and it's traveling through the system, but it's still hot, even though it got transformed into a liquid state. But before it can hit the cooling area, which is the evaporator, it has to cool down. It can't go into the evaporator too hot. So in order to make that happen, it has to pass through this right here as it leaves the condenser. This is called the expansion valve. It cools down the refrigerant. It depressurizes the refrigerant. It comes from a very pressurized hot state, and it gets depressurized right here at the expansion valve. See how this tube here is very narrow? That depressurizes the refrigerant, okay? And that depressurization causes the liquid refrigerant to become cooler, and it fills these coils here called the evaporator. And as the fan blows past these coils, it blows out cool air because the refrigerant is cooled off. That's how cold it's getting, guys. That's condensation. That's how cold and wet it's getting. Blowing out hot air right now, guys. These coils are hot and these coils are cold. And you may be wondering what this is. This is the accumulator. As the refrigerant cycles through the evaporator, it returns down through the accumulator, okay? And any excess liquid is captured by this before it goes back into the compressor, because too much freon or liquid refrigerant could damage the compressor. So that liquid, that excess liquid, is captured by this, and the gas is captured by the compressor. Sometimes the radiator fins get clogged or get dirty, and on the condenser side right here, if they're too dirty, they won't allow heat to escape out of your house, right? And it'll stay hot. And if the fins are dirty on the evaporator side, cool air won't be allowed to get out either. So you want to make sure these are clean. You don't want to use a blower to blow out any dust or debris, because it's just blowing it back into the system. You want to use a vacuum to suck it out, okay? So just use a vacuum cleaner attachment to go in there and just suck out all the dust and debris that collects there. Now, as far as the circuit panel or control board, you want to look for any bad relays, like burnt relays, burnt connections, or anything like that. Try not to touch the capacitor because they do hold a charge, so you want to be careful and stay away from that. If you want to discharge the capacitor, just take a screwdriver and tap both poles of the capacitor at the same time to discharge it. This right here is a temperature sensor, and it gives a reading through the circuit boards, okay? And you can tell what it says on the LCD screen. If there's any fluid buildup, you can always drain it here. Just unloosen that knob and that should drain. You can drain out any fluid there. And if it's a compressor issue, the compressor most likely is not starting or it's not heating up at all. If the fan's not spinning, it could be a motor issue. And don't forget to clean your air filters. Pretty dirty, right? So basically, guys, that's how portable ACs work in a nutshell. So if you like the video, hit that like and subscribe. comment, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.